Okay, let's dive into this. It's almost like a geopolitical soap opera, isn't it?
Maybe a bit. You've got Kenya, right?
Yeah.
Just given this major non-NATO ally status by the U.S., big deal.
Like the ultimate friendship bracelet in international security terms.
Exactly. And then almost immediately, the U.S. sees Kenya getting, well, very friendly with China.
Leading to that awkward "wait, who's this now?"
Yeah.
moment. It's high-stakes stuff.
Absolutely. And what's really interesting, based on what we're seeing from First Post Africa and Citizen TV Kenya, is how public this tension is becoming. Kenya is a key player, strategically vital for the U.S. and East Africa. But now, this apparent closeness with China.
So our mission today in this deep dive is to look beyond those headlines.
Right. We want to figure out why U.S. senators are suddenly scrutinizing President Ruto's remarks about China. What's really driving this?
And what could it all mean down the line?
Exactly. We need to understand the core issues.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning of this recent spike in tension. President Ruto's trip to Beijing back in April.
That seems to be the catalyst, yeah. He gave a speech at Peking University.
And it wasn't exactly a love letter to the current world order?
Not quite. The reports say he called the global system broken and no longer fit for purpose.
Wow. Broken.
Yeah.
That's direct. Especially for a leader whose country just got a major nod from the U.S.
Very direct. And he didn't stop there. He apparently described Kenya and China as potential co-architects of a new, fairer order.
Co-architects of a new order with China. While holding that non-NATO ally status from the U.S., that must have set off some alarms in Washington.
You'd think so, and it seems it did. The U.S. Senate Foreign Relations Committee held a session on East Africa.
And Kenya's pivot, or perceived pivot, was on the agenda.
Very much so. Senator James Risch, for instance, didn't mince words. He directly questioned Kenya's allegiance, asked if it was shifting.
Oof. Allegiance. That's a loaded term in diplomacy.
It is. And he went further, warning that relying on leaders who, quote, openly embrace Beijing could be a strategic mistake for the U.S.
Like saying, be careful who you make friends with.
Essentially, yes. He even suggested the U.S. might need to, and I'm quoting again, reevaluate America's relationship with Kenya.
Reevaluate?
Yeah.
After just granting them that special status.
Seems so. He floated the idea of shifting focus, maybe towards institutions, the private sector, or even, the younger generation in Kenya.
They're like hedging their bets, saying, maybe we need to build ties beyond just the current leadership.
It certainly suggests a potential shift in how the U.S. approaches these partnerships. Which brings us back to that non-NATO ally designation.
Right. That's the core of the contradiction here, isn't it? It happened under the previous U.S. administration. Biden's team gave Kenya this status.
Correct. And it's not just symbolic. It comes with real perks.
Like what?
Preferential access to U.S. military gear, training opportunities, defense loans. It streamlines cooperation significantly. It signals deep trust.
So, getting that designation, and then almost immediately hearing the Kenyan president talk about co-architecting a new world order with China, it's jarring.
It creates tension, definitely. You have the U.S. acknowledging Kenya's strategic role, its importance in counterterrorism in the region.
Especially in Somalia.
Especially in Somalia. But then you have these statements and the very real deepening ties with China, which understandably makes Washington nervous.
Let's talk about those ties. China's Belt and Road Initiative, for example. Huge infrastructure investments in Kenya.
Massive. Funding critical projects, roads, railways. It's very visible.
And President Ruto himself used some pretty strong language during that Beijing trip, didn't he? Calling Kenya and China, what was it?
All-weather strategic cooperative partners.
All-weather. That sounds pretty committed. Like, rain or shine, Beijing's our partner.
It certainly implies a very close, resilient relationship. Plus, Kenya officially reaffirmed its commitment to the One China principle.
Which is always a key diplomatic signal for Beijing, recognizing their position on Taiwan.
Absolutely. And it wasn't just high-level statecraft. While this Senate hearing was unfolding in D.C., President Ruto was back in Nairobi meeting a Chinese delegation. The topic? Boosting Kenyan tea exports to China.
So, business as usual, even while the political winds seem to be shifting. Talk about multitasking.
And there are even reports, according to the sources, suggesting closer ties between Kenya's ruling party, the UDA, and the Chinese Communist Party.
So it might be deepening beyond just government-to-government deals, moving into party-to-party connections.
That's what's being suggested, which, again, adds another layer for the U.S. to consider.
So the U.S. has significant interests, economic security in the region. Kenya's been a cornerstone partner.
For years.
But this growing closeness with Beijing is, as the reports put it, forcing a bigger question about Nairobi's alignment. Where do they really stand?
Exactly. And Senator Risch put it bluntly, time to reassess our relationship with Kenya and others who forged tight bonds with China.
That sounds like a potential threat to years of cooperation, defense ties, diplomatic gains.
It could potentially put all of that at risk, yes, if the perception in Washington is that Kenya is tilting too far towards Beijing.
But Kenya must see this coming, right? President Ruto has actually talked about this, about not picking sides.
He has. He's framed Kenya's approach as deliberately non-aligned, not exclusively east or west.
Trying to navigate the middle ground.
His words were something like wanting to navigate strategically across the complex geopolitical tensions of east, west, north, and south.
That's quite the tightrope walk.
It is. And look at the scheduling, it seems symbolic. Kenya was the first African state visit to the U.S. in 2024.
Right.
And reportedly, it's set to be the first African state visit to China in 2025.
So, actively engaging both sides at the highest level, trying to be that bridge.
That seems to be the strategy. Whether they can successfully be a bridge between east and west, north and south, as some suggest, well, that remains to be seen. It's a tough balancing act.
And meanwhile, back in Nairobi, when these reports came out about the U.S. Senate concerns, any official word?
According to the sources we looked at, not immediately, Nairobi hadn't issued an official statement responding to the developments in Washington at that point.
Probably choosing their words carefully, trying not to alienate either Washington or Beijing.
You'd imagine so. It's a delicate diplomatic dance.
Okay, so let's wrap this up. Key takeaways.
Well, first, the U.S. is clearly concerned, maybe even alarmed, by Kenya's strengthening relationship with China.
Especially right after giving them the major non-NATO ally status.
Right. That timing makes it particularly awkward. And this concern is leading to talk of reassessing the U.S.-Kenya relationship.
While Kenya, for its part, seems determined to pursue its own path, engaging with multiple global powers, not putting all its eggs in one basket.
Exactly. President Ruto seems to be trying to position Kenya as a strategic player that can work with everyone.
And for you listening in, this whole episode is a real-world case study in just how messy international relations are today.
It's not a simple world of clear alliances anymore. It's multipolar. Nations are constantly calculating their interests.
Trying to navigate between big powers, secure investment, maintain security. It's complex. Understanding these dynamics helps make sense of the shifting global picture.
And it leaves us with a final thought, something for you to chew on. Kenya's got this strategic location, this ambition to be a bridge.
Yeah.
How might its evolving relationships, this dance between the U.S. and China, actually change the geopolitical game in East Africa, or maybe even more broadly?
And maybe a bigger question. In this world, what does being an ally truly mean anymore? Is it exclusive? Can you be friends with rivals?
Definitely something worth thinking about. The definition seems to be evolving.